Donald Trump testifies in the E. Jean Carroll trial. It's day 4. We've had some health delays. We had a juror who was sick, and when we come back to trial, we're going to see the juror is socially distanced away from everybody else. But we're back. Trump showed up, and he is traveling, as you can see in this GIF, to Southern District of New York. We're in federal court. The case involves E. Jean Carroll, and we've been covering the trial courtesy of Inner City Press, Matthew Russell Lee. Now, before we jump into this, let's take a look and set the scene and see what it was like outside the courtroom. You can see Fox News was there. They had their cameras rolling, and you can see
for day
here
5.
is Trump pulling up. E. Jean Carroll's there in the bottom right, and they go to this guy who's actually on scene.
Good morning, Bill. On this rainy day here in New York City, the former president is in the courthouse behind me. Proceedings about to begin in the defamation trial brought by magazine writer E. Jean Carroll. It seems that the president is pretty confident when he left Trump Tower. Take a look at this. He pumped his fist in the air, a sign of optimism, perhaps, that he is ready potentially to testify in this trial. The big question is, will he take the stand basically in his own defense in this trial? A previous jury, though, last May found that the former president is liable for sexually assaulting Miss Carroll in a department store dressing room back in 1996, that he did defame her, and despite his denials, he continues to deny this. He did know her at the time. This jury, though, will only deal with the amount of damages dealing with this situation, not whether or not the facts of the case as they have been laid out and as he has been denying them. Judge Lewis Kaplan,
there's E. Jean Carroll.
Well, he's a pretty tough federal judge. He will likely try and restrict Mr. Trump to the law under the rules of the law. Because this is only dealing with damages, the former president will not be allowed basically to deny that there was the assault, because the jury has already found, the previous jury, as a matter of fact, that he did assault Miss Carroll.
And it was by a preponderance of the evidence, and they also found that E. Jean Carroll was not credible as to the R, and they always leave that part out. The jury found that he was liable for the assault, but they didn't say that he was found not liable for the R. In other words, she was not credible for that. Her story, the jury did not believe. Some people might say that she's a liar, because she testified that he gave her the old hibbity-dibbity, in addition to grabbing her by the purse. But the jury said, no, we don't believe you, and they just gave her the other one because they hate Trump, in my opinion. So that's the background, that's setting the scene, and that was on Fox News. Their cameras were rolling. But this person was in the courtroom himself, and he is reporting what happened inside. Matthew Russell Lee, he's over on X at Inner City Press, and we're jumping in to his trial excerpt. Here's what he tells us. Everybody is inside the courtroom. Door slams open. Judge Kaplan comes barging through. All rise. Oh gosh, it's the judge, this guy again. All right, please be seated. We notice that the jurors in seats 2 and 3 are going to be socially distanced, is what the judge says. We had a little bit of a sickness in the house, and so jurors sit apart from each other. They move. E. Jean Carroll's lawyer, Roberta Kaplan, says, Your Honor, can we put our witness on the stand before the jurors come in? Yes. E. Jean Carroll's back on the stand. Or actually, no, it's this woman, Roberta Myers. So she's on the stand. Then they bring the jury in. Judge Kaplan says, good morning, jurors. I hope everyone is feeling fit today, since we had the last 2 days off. Miss Kaplan, call your next witness, please. E. Jean Carroll's lawyer says, thank you, Your Honor. We call Roberta Myers. Who's Roberta? She's the former editor of Elle magazine, which is evidently where E. Jean worked. Judge Kaplan says the record will reflect that Mr. Trump is in the courtroom. Now, Trump sits down next to Alina wearing a blue tie today, looking sharp, Mr. President. Roberta says to Miss Myers, Roberta, oh gosh, we got 2 Robertas. Oh gosh. Okay, so Myers is on the stand. Roberta Kaplan says, have you ever testified before? Myers says, yeah, I did, in the first Carroll versus Trump trial. And then after that, did you go on TV? Myers says, yeah, I did. I went on MSNBC. Who did you vote for, Miss Myers, in 2016 and 2020? Democrats. Did Elle endorse political candidates? She says, no, that wasn't our role. We wrote profiles. Were you friendly with Miss Carroll, Miss Myers? Yeah, I was, but we were busy. No further questions. Alina stands up. Judge Kaplan says, cross. She says, yeah, I've got this one. I'll be brief. Miss Myers, you don't plan to vote for Donald Trump in 2024, do you? So I don't think I have to say what I plan to do to you. Well, Alina says, oh, that's fair enough. Okay. Were you terminated by Elle, Miss Myers? She says, well, they didn't renew my contract. Do you know that? Objection, says Carroll's lawyer. Kaplan says, sustained. Let's focus on the facts of this case, he says. I don't care about what happened with her contract. So you weren't at Elle, says Mrs. When Miss Carroll departed, were you? No, I was not. So you have no knowledge, says Alina, from 2017 to 2019. You don't know anything about this? Nothing more than gossip. Alina's like, ooh, what was the gossip? Objection, sustained. What kind of writer was Miss Carroll? Myers says journalistic. What does that mean? Accurate. Miss Carroll gave relationship advice, didn't she? Says Alina. She wrote about the culture. And how would she respond to actual questions. Oh, she would call a psychiatrist or an MD or an expert. That's being a fact-checking journalist? Objection, sustained. Alina says, okay, so what? I've ruled, says the judge. Move on. Alina says, okay, fine. No more questions. Kaplan says, you're excused, Ms. Myers. Thank you. Witness gets off the bench and exits the courtroom. Judge Kaplan looks over to Roberta Kaplan, E. Jean's lawyer, says, any more plaintiffs, witnesses, any other people we're going to be hearing from today? She says, no, we just have a few exhibits. Let's play the video of exhibit 164. Alina Abba says, no objection. So note that. Trump gets played. The video of Trump gets played. He says in the video, Trump says, this is a rigged deal. I had no idea who she was, nor could I care less. Kaplan says, hang on, when was that? And Alina says, Your Honor, we met and conferred about this and we objected to this. And the judge says, well, this just came in without objection. Okay, so he says, Alina, you just said no objection. Now you're saying we met and conferred and objected? He says, this just came in without objection. She says, yeah, but he says, have a seat. They play the video. And so what happened here, I'm guessing, is that Alina met with Roberta. Like, this feels very underhanded here. I don't know what happened, but it feels very underhanded. So in other words, Alina and the defense from Trump met with Roberta and the lawyers for E. Jean. They agreed that video exhibit 164 would be, like, let's say 10 seconds and include this section. She plays it. It's 15 seconds and includes the full thing. They play it in front of the jury. Alina says, hey, when I agreed to that, when I said no objection, judge, like, she's going to try to explain this, it was for the 10-second version, but they played the 15-second version and they didn't tell me that they were going to be doing that. We already met about this. And he says, shut up, sit down, pipe down, have a seat. You already let it in. So that feels underhanded to me. I don't know what happened, if Roberta, swapped the exhibit around, or if there was confusion about the exhibit or what it was, but that's what I think happened. So shut up. Carroll's lawyer says, okay, next exhibit. They're playing these in front of the jury. Now Trump's other lawyer, Madeo, also with Alina's firm, says, we objected to this one, Your Honor. Can we have a sidebar, please? They walk up, the husher goes on, whisper, pshh. Now they're back and they play the video. So now this is Trump's April 2023 deposition. There's a blue background. Trump saying, my most valuable assets here is the brand. Says, I became president because of the brand. I think it's the hottest brand in the world. I did an NFT and it's sold out. He says, this is the depot. Jury's watching this. And the cards, he says, remember the Trump cards everybody kind of made fun of? Their value is up. I'm happy. Trump people, I did it. It sold out immediately. Some of the cards are selling for 20 grand. One, I think, is going for 82 grand. I heard numbers like that. Someone hit the jackpot. Trump continues, says, I believe the brand is worth even more than the buildings. It's like Coke. Then there's the New York Attorney General lawyer, says, what's the price of Mar-a-Lago to Trump in the depot? This is a video. He says 1.5 billion. Tishy's lawyer says, well, here's your letter to Deutsche Bank. Trump looks at it. He's staring at it on the video. Okay, thanks. Jury's watching. Tishy's lawyer. Now, so they went over to New York. They're still in New York, right? This is a New York trial. You showed it to Deutsche Bank. Commercial real estate? He says, no. Showed it to another division of the same bank. They're very separate. So Carroll's lawyer says, perfect. We got that one in. We also offer plaintiff's exhibit 167 and 167T, another deposition video. Question to Trump. When did you move into Trump Tower? This is a year after it was built. When were you married to your first wife, Ivana? 1978 to the early 90s. When you were president, Mr. Trump, did you ever speak directly to reporters? Yes, too many to name. Did you read the cut excerpt? I don't believe I did. And the book, What Do We Need Men For? Have you ever read it? No, never seen it. Did you say this? There is zero evidence, quote, it's fake news, no sales attendants around, all should condemn false accusation. If info is Democrats are working with Miss Carroll, let us know. Did you say this, Mr. President, Mr. Trump? Yes, I stand behind it. And did you say, I'll say it with great respect, did you say this? She's not my type. Trump says yes. And you said you never met her? Yes. Later, they showed me a photo from a receiving line at a charity. I shake a lot of hands. Her husband, John Johnson, was there. Jury is still watching. They say, who's in this photo? He says, it's Marla. And they show this photo. And he's saying, you're saying that's Marla? He says, it's E. Jean Carroll. Because the question is, no, that's not Marla. So Trump picked the wrong woman, they said. And I've seen the photo. We'll see if he has it here, but it's kind of hard to tell, right? It's a blurry black and white photo. Everybody kind of looks the same. It's like where all the women had their hair like identical. So like kind of interchangeable almost. They say it's E. Jean Carroll. Trump says it's John Johnson. It's very blurry. So what did you mean? She's not my type. Like physically? He says, yes. And now that I know more, not my type in any way. Not physically, not emotionally. I don't like her sense of humor. She's weird. She lives in the forest with mice in her kitchen and thinks rape is sexy. I take it the 3 women you married are your type. Yes. Now, what is Truth Social, says Trump? It's a platform opened by me, an alternative to Twitter. And you issued a statement on Truth, right? Yes, I did. Trump says she's sick. She made it up, contradicted by what she said on CNN. Jury's watching the video. He says, I'll be suing her when this case is over, and I'll be suing you too. Are you done? Did you write all this yourself? Yes. You wrote, I have no idea who she is. Yes, I think she's a whack job. Now, Trump, you said the word hoax 250 times in 2020. He said, oh, probably. There are a lot of hoaxes played on me. Russia, 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 Ukraine, Mueller, lying to the FISA court, all hoaxes, lying to Congress, hoax by the scum that we have in this country. And she's a liar and she's sick. In addition to Mueller, question, Russia, 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 did you also call mail-in ballots a hoax? He says, yeah, they are very dishonest. But you vote by mail. Yes, but after it in, I don't know what's next. After I throw it in the mail, I don't know what's next. Your Honor, I believe we're done with our evidence, but give us a break first, demands Carroll's lawyer. But give us the break first. Okay, 10 minutes. Jury leaves. Jury's out. They have their break. Carroll's lawyer says, Your Honor, they intend to call Mr. Trump and then they're going to call Miss Martin. Judge Kaplan says, aren't there motions after they close? Alina says, yeah. Okay. All rise. Judge waddles out of there for the 10-minute break and we're back. Judge Kaplan's back. Says, Miss Carroll's lawyers, is the plaintiff going to rest? Roberta says, yes, Your Honor. Plaintiff rests. So what Judge Kaplan asks for here is a motion. And remember, we've talked about this in other trials we've covered, but when the presenting side, in this case, it's the plaintiff, or in a criminal case, it's the prosecutors, when they bring their case, they present their case, at the conclusion of all of their evidence, there's a mechanism, different rules in different states, but there's a mechanism by which you say, even if we say that everything that they presented was true, even if everything was true, like we don't have to present one shred of evidence, you still, under the law, can't find my client guilty or liable in this case, because it's civil. And there's a mechanism for that. And it works, called a directed verdict, or you may hear this, use different phrases, but that's the mechanism, right? And so Alina, the judge was waiting. Okay, so they just rested. Alina, is there a motion? Normal question. Yes. She says, under Rule 50A, the letter, Judge Kaplan cuts her off. Alina says, yes, Your Honor, we have a motion. Under Rule 50A, he says, hey, Rule 58 doesn't have anything to do with this. Alina, she says, I said 50A as an apple, not 58, Your Honor. Like, this judge is just spring-loaded. Rule 58 doesn't have anything to do with this. I didn't say that. If you'd relax for 2 seconds, I said 50A. She says, this backlash against E. Jean Carroll, it occurred before President Trump even had an opportunity to speak. And so, in other words, if E. Jean was already getting abused before Trump even spoke, she says a jury cannot find that he caused this. Trump didn't cause the harm. The cut caused the harm. The magazine caused the harm. She cites this case, Samuels versus Air Transport. We are entitled to judgment as a matter of law. Oh, the judge says, well, you're saying there's no causation then. She says, yes, that's what I'm saying, but I'd like to finish and make a record. He said, you've already made a record, but if you're going to be brief, I'll hear it. Alina says, thanks, Judge. Gosh, thanks for letting me do my job. She says, Your Honor, Miss Carroll has made lewd posts about wieners and footlongs and Nathan's hot dogs, and people found those tweets and responded to those. She made those posts. People responded to her. She says she also intentionally deleted evidence. Well, when did that deletion occur, Alina, says the judge? The day the cut came out. The day the article came out. Kaplan says, well, wasn't there no anticipation of litigation until she spoke with George Conway? So she deleted stuff before there was even litigation underway. Well, after she talked to George Conway, she continued to delete, Your Honor. Did you get a subpoena in this case for that record? It's discovery rules, Your Honor. We need it from discovery. We don't need a subpoena. We can point to her testimony in court where she said that. Well, you've already pointed to that, says the judge. But where is there a subpoena in the record? Well, we can submit it if you want us to. Not later, now. Says these are emails that included death threats, didn't they? Well, that's what she says. We don't know. They were deleted. So you're saying she should be punished because she deleted tweets that would be helpful to her. Alina says, that's not what I'm saying. Kaplan says, you're repeating yourself. She says, well, clearly I'm not being heard, Judge. Their expert wasn't even aware that President Trump's statement was 5 hours after the cut came out. She said, I'm not aware because she didn't even consider the timing. So she, even their expert, can't establish causation. So this case should not go to this jury. Roberta Kaplan says, judge looks at her and says, well, what's your response to this? Roberta says, I'm going to be brief here, Your Honor. There's ample evidence of causation. Mr. Trump did speak before the tweet. There was a denial in the cut. Okay, so in other words, the magazine posted the piece that Trump attacked this woman, and when they reached out to the White House for comment, he denied it. So that's the causation. So when the article went public, Trump's denial is what caused people to criticize E. Jean Carroll and threaten her, and then that's what led to this whole thing. So apparently, like, you can't even deny anything now, because then they'll just sue you and bring you to court for it. So Carroll's Roberta says, the tweets overlap with what Mr. Trump said on June 21st and on June 22nd. And so judge says, oh, perfect. So there could be multiple causations then. Maybe the magazine, maybe Trump's denial, maybe Trump's response, maybe other, who knows. But Roberta says, but the response here was foreseeable. So Trump should have known because Trump said people should pay dearly for for these types of lies. So he knew what was going to come when he denied. And so the judge says, excellent point there, Roberta. Alina, your motion is denied. And these motions are almost always denied, right? Because you're in the middle of a trial. So that's not unusual, but the judge is unusual in how he handles all of this. He's basically arguing against Alina and in favor of Roberta. So he says, your motion's denied, Alina. Who's your first witness here today? She says, okay, that sounds about right. All right, Your Honor, the defense calls Carroll Martin and says, when we call her, by the way, they have opened the door. Roberta has opened the door for me to ask my client what he meant in the deposition because they opened the door. And the judge says, Roberta? Says, Judge, Your Honor already ruled what Donald Trump can say, so he can't talk about that. Says, Your Honor has ruled that Trump cannot contradict the prior jury's findings. And we think it's appropriate for Miss Abba to proffer what her client can testify to. Judge says, I'm planning on dealing with this, but what about Carroll Martin? And Roberta says, well, they want to put in new exhibits, including a text message, and we object. Well, who's going to address this for Mr. Trump? Is it you, Alina, or who? Madeo from Alina's firm says, I will. Says, by the way, exhibit 101 is already in evidence. The other is a text. Kaplan says, I am only asking for a number. Don't read it to me. Now, says Madeo, you've had these documents a long time, haven't you? He says, yeah. Well, we intend to use it to impeach her. To impeach your own witness? She's an adverse party. So yeah, Alina says they've opened the door to this, Your Honor, on the Reid Hoffman issue as well. They asked about George Soros and the DNC, and so the door is open. He says, the door is closed. Don't ask about Reid Hoffman. Let's bring in the jury. Jury enters. Everyone stands up. Nice to see you, jury. Great. Thank you for being here. We care about you so much. Thanks for doing your civic duty. Sit back down. Deputy Andy, shout out to our court deputies, says, what is your name? She swears in. Francis Carroll Martin. You promise to tell the truth, all the truth, nothing but God? God? I do. Alina says, how long have you known Miss Carroll? Miss Martin? Oh my gosh, all these names. Carroll Martin, Francis Carroll Martin. We're going to call her Martin. We're going to call E. Jean. How long have you known E. Jean? Martin says 30 years. Wow, it's a long time. Do you have a lawyer, Miss Martin? I do. And did we try to interview you before this case? You did. Alina says, I'd like her declared a hostile witness, Your Honor. Did you last meet with plaintiff's counsel in the last month? Twice. And did you speak with us? No. And you're here under a subpoena from us? Yes. And you went to Miss Kaplan's firm, didn't you? Yes. And did they show you documents? No, I testified twice before. And when you testified both times for Miss Carroll, right? Yes. Do you use Twitter or social media? No, I prefer to live a private life. Otherwise it'd be public? Seems so. Now you reviewed a portion of Miss Carroll's book, didn't you? A portion. And you reviewed the cut? The cut? Meaning what? The New York Magazine. Oh, yes. Did you read the whole book? Over time I did. And when did you finish her book? It's hard to say. Were you concerned for E. Jean's safety? On some levels. And for my daughter. And did you tell Miss Carroll about that? Yeah. Yes, I did. How? Judge Kaplan jumps in. He says, is this a hypothetical question? She says, no. I'm asking about text or in person. That was my question. He says, no, it wasn't. Did you put anything in an email about your safety? Says Alina. He's like, if this judge is just going to keep doing this, like this is normal conversation and the judge is interrupting her, to make her direct exam off. Okay, fine, judge. He wants her to say email. Did you put anything in an email about your safety? Yes. Did you feel better? Well, it ebbed and flowed. The climate in the country was changing rapidly, says Miss Martin. And after the cut article, were you concerned for your safety? My daughter was. And Miss Carroll told you, E. Jean, that she had zero security concerns. She did. I don't know if she said zero. Well, what is this? Shows her this thing. Oh, this is text from Miss Carroll. Your Honor, we moved Defense Exhibit 101. We'd like to use this to impeach her. Objection. There's nothing to impeach her about. Alina says, Your Honor, I have a right to ask her what it says. Kaplan says, okay, it's in evidence. Alina says, Miss Carroll, E. Jean invited you, Martin, to a social event about her case, didn't she? Yes. Which events did she invite you to? I don't know. Was I arguing at them? You? No. After the New York Times podcast, there was interest in this story. There was a Harvey Weinstein sidebar. It was not just E. Jean, but others as well. Do you think that Miss Carroll, E. Jean, was enjoying the attention? She says, yeah, at points. Miss Martin says, what does narcissism mean to you? Seeing things through yourself. And you're under oath, right? You said that Miss Carroll's narcissism has run amok. Is that what you said? I texted that to a friend. So I understand it's hard to say that about a friend. Judge cuts her off. No speeches, Miss Abba. Okay, Miss Martin, you've said that Miss Carroll is also a drug addict and the drug is herself, right? I don't remember if I said that. Do you see this document? She says, yeah, I see it. That was written to my daughter. So even her friend, which is like, this woman, by the way, is a key witness in the first trial. She said that she got a phone call from E. Jean after it happened and E. Jean told her that it happened, right? A contemporaneous report back then, 25 years ago. And then there's all this other stuff. Oh, Miss Carroll's a drug addict? Oh, that's what you said? Oh, Miss Carroll is a narcissist who just makes everything about herself? Judge cuts her off. Some to the sidebar and bring a copy of this in writing, please. They put the whisper on. And they're back. Alina says, did you understand Miss Carroll was hoping to lose this so she could go to the Supreme Court? Objection. Sustained. Alina Alina says, we're going through this ad nauseum. Can you look at, he says, why don't you ask a proper question? She says, okay, so she could sell more books, right? Miss Carroll wanted to sell more books. Martin says, well, she wanted to sell her book. Do you believe that publicity has become a part of E. Jean's lifestyle? It's an extension of the lifestyle she already had. Yes or no? I'm hard pressed to say. Did E. Jean celebrate this case? It was organized by journalists to celebrate it. Well, what journalists? There were more than one. Who do they write for? New York Times? From the New York Times? I don't know. Anyone from Fox News? Not that I know of. How many parties about these lawsuits against Mr. Trump? 6. These people have Trump prosecution parties because they're sick. How many parties about these lawsuits? 6 I went to. It's crazy. Which one with journalists? I don't remember. Did these journalists write articles about her case? Objection sustained. So they're like little coming out parties, right? E. Jean's going to show up and all these other anti-Trumpers are going to write puff pieces about her. It's like, gosh, what a bunch of freaks. Alina says, were you frustrated by these parties about the lawsuit? Somewhat. We are different. Well, what about the dinner? Were there lawyers there? Robbie was there, Roberta Kaplan. And George Conway, was he there? No. You stated that Miss Carroll was acting a little scary. Didn't you say that? Yeah, that was a bad choice of words. But you said it, right? So that's a yes? Yeah. You said she was loving the adulation, didn't you? Did you share with others private messages that Miss Carroll sent you? Like this exhibit here? I offer it as evidence. I object. Alina says it's for impeachment. So let me have a legible copy, says the judge. Judge looks at it and says, sustained. He keeps that out. But you have shared Miss Carroll's private messages. I really don't remember. Do you see that you sent this to sustained? It says you're reading a document that's not in evidence. Alina, do you believe, Miss Martin, that Miss Carroll is enjoying this fame? I think she's adapting. Enjoying is a multifaceted word. Alina says no further questions. Any cross-exam? Roberta's up. Says, you know Miss Carroll has been harmed because you're friends. Objection. She's Miss Abba's witness. Objection. Judge says overruled. Were you named in the book, Miss Martin? Said it was dedicated to me and Miss Birnbach. In the book, I was identified as a news reporter. And did you? Objection. Your Honor, we discussed all this before. Happy to discuss a sidebar. And they're back. Miss Martin, were you concerned about your safety? Once I spoke with the New York Times podcast, I was. Were you concerned because you'd been involved with Miss Carroll's lawsuit against Trump? Objection. Overruled. She says the U.S. climate felt different to me. Dangerous to me. What do you mean about lifestyle? Well, that the lawsuit had become a large part of her life. So you were concerned that it wouldn't work out for her? Objection. Overruled. You discussed, Miss Martin, the passage of the New York law that allowed her to sue Trump. Objection. I never asked about that. Kaplan says, well, you alluded to it, so it's overruled. She did? You didn't want her to file a second lawsuit? You said you didn't want her to file a second lawsuit? Martin says, he was saying he hadn't lost the 2020 election. Objection. Overruled. Were you concerned? Concerned that the defamation would just continue and escalate. Carroll's lawyer says, well, what did you mean drug addict? No idea. I use words too loosely sometimes. And since Miss Carroll had been a journalist her whole life, this is rehabilitating her. It's like a cross-exam, but he's really rehabilitating her. It's not surprising that there were journalists at her parties, right? Right. Yeah, that's why they have parties. They're all just friends. Do you think Miss Carroll is a narcissist? I have no idea. Do you distrust her motives? No. What was her job when you got her, when you met her? A columnist. Then in 1994, we did TV shows for America Talks. Do you think Miss Carroll wants to be known as the woman who lied about the president assaulting her? Objection. Overruled. No. No further questions. Kaplan says, okay, we're going to take our break now. Lawyers be back at 10 of 2. Jurors, you have a bit longer. I got some business to do with him. Now we're back. Kaplan says, so they're done. And we got Alina is now calling more witnesses. The break is over. Judge Kaplan says, Miss Abba, do you have any other witnesses here today? She says, yes, I do. President Trump. He says, great. Judge says, I have a few things to say. There was a trial last year about the truth or falsity of Miss Carroll's claims. Mr. Trump was listed as a witness, but did not testify. And the jury found for Miss Carroll, there are no do-overs. It's called issue preclusion or collateral estoppel, meaning we take that ruling and just bring it over here. The jury found that Mr. Trump, he says, inserted his fingers into her purse, which we say was, we're not sure about that. We're going to get back to that because that's not what the verdict form said. It just said assault. Insertion, we don't know about that. Could be outside doing the DJ diddles. And that Miss Carroll did not make up her claim. But the judge should say that the jury did find that she did make up the R claim. You know how they always leave that out. And now that Mr. Trump's statements were defamatory, now Mr. Trump may not make any arguments against this. It's totally dishonest, in my opinion, to say that Miss Carroll did not make up her claim. The jury found that she did make up the R claim. Clearly, they said no. So she's not entirely honest, according to the old jury, but they leave that part out. So she's not credible in their eyes. So now Mr. Trump cannot make up any arguments about this. Now, Miss Carroll adhered to the court's rulings, and Miss Kaplan, on behalf of Miss Carroll, questioned if Mr. Trump could offer any admissible testimony. Now, Miss Abba, you said he could testify about the reporter's questions and if he was acting with ill will. And so he says a judge must seek to exclude inadmissible evidence, and those concerns exist here, including in Ms. Kaplan's letter. And I want to confirm a few things. Ms. Abba, what is Trump going to be testifying to? She says, Your Honor, I have not much to ask. I only have 3 questions for my clients. That's it. He says, I don't care. We're going to do it my way. He's going to stand by his deposition. He's going to respond to the accusation, and he's going to deny them. That's it, 100%. I'm not testifying for my client. Judge says, let me hear from the other side. Roberta, what do you say? She says, well, just now, Mr. Trump said under his breath, sitting over there at the table, he's going to say he never did it. So he will not testify about questions asked of him by reporters. Alina says, no, if I may, Your Honor. He says, no. What are your questions? She said that he stands behind his deposition. I'll ask about the state of his mind. He'll say he was defending himself. And that's it? Yes, and that he never intended to hurt Miss Carroll. Well, he had an opportunity, Roberta says, to already participate in trial, and the judge says, yeah, and he lost. And I will so instruct the jury. More than once. Trump says, I wasn't at the trial. I never met this woman. He says that from the bench. Kaplan says, Mr. Trump, keep your voice down. Will your client abide, Miss Abba, Mrs. Absent having a glass ball, she says. Trump is saying something, and judge cuts him off. Mr. Trump, that is not allowed. I will permit him to get on the stand. You ask if he stands by it, and that's it. So I only get one question? You can ask the second question. The question about why did you make the statements? No. Okay. So I have a right to ask about intent, I think. I will decide what he has a right to do here. That's my job, not yours. Well, I can ask it that way. It will not be an open-ended question, Miss Abba. If you ask it, there is likely to be an objection, and I am likely to sustain it. That's okay. Well, what about the second question? Can I ask that? He says it keeps changing. What is your second question? As long as we have the deposition in, I think it'll be fine. He said, well, I hope you will. Bring in the jury. Jury comes in. We stand up again. He says, all right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope lunch was better than the cafeteria usually is. Miss Abba, it's Mrs., I think, unfortunately. You may call your witness. Alina Abba stands and says, the defense calls President Donald Trump. Judge Kaplan, who's a bitter man, says, Donald John Trump. Don't call him president in my courtroom. All right, so he's so petty, he corrects him. Donald John Trump. Or maybe that's Trump saying Donald John Trump. I think that was actually the judge. So he comes up to the stand, state your name, what's your name? Donald John Trump, promise to tell the truth, I do. And I'll see if I can find that other exchange. Now, you viewed your deposition, says Miss Abba. Trump is now on the stand. He's sworn in. Mr. President, you viewed your deposition, didn't you? I stand by it 100%. Yes. He says she said something I considered a false accusation. Roberta jumps up. Objection. Kaplan sustained. Alina Abba's done. I have no further questions. That's it. Cross. Roberta jumps up. Mr. Trump, there was a trial here, correct? Yeah. And Mr. Trump, is this the first trial between you and Miss Carroll you've attended? Yes. No further questions. Alina comes up, says, Mr. President, did you have counsel at the previous trial and follow their advice? Yes. Objection. Sustained. Alina, no further questions. That's it. That's Trump's testimony. One and done. One question. That's it. Now, obviously, the reason for that, the judge wasn't going to let him talk about anything. So what could he really say? Kaplan excused the jurors. Jurors, you may go until tomorrow morning. We're going to have closing arguments tomorrow. We'll see you back here for that. Says counsel can pick up the draft jury charge at 2:30. We got to run the copier. We'll see you back here at 3:30 when we go through the jury instructions. And we're back. The jurors are now gone. It's now Trump's lawyer, Roberta's lawyer, Eugene's lawyer, and the judge. Trump's defense says, Your Honor, and they're looking at the jury instructions, right? They're trying to, what is the jury going to look at when they're making their decisions? Your Honor, we seek to limit this instruction, says Trump's defense. Kaplan says, but you previously argued under New York law that Mr. Trump could have been found to have committed assault if he touched her breast. Well, that was previous counsel, not us. That's Trump's counsel, his argument. It was found in the previous case that there was digital penetration. Under penal law, there's some laughter in the courtroom, get it? Now, how do you propose we describe it, the digital penetration? He says, there's no need for the jury to hear any of this. He says, Mr. Medeo, I'm giving you one more chance. He says, okay, well, what the jury found was abuse, not digital penetration. He says, you're repeating yourself. He says, you know our objections. He says, yeah, I do. Your objections are overruled. Says the jury is clearly entitled to award punitive damages to deter Trump from continuing to defame her, or anyone else for that matter. And so I think we're done, counsel. I appreciate the cooperation on both sides. Thanks for being here. See you tomorrow for closing arguments and maybe even a verdict. And so big, ultra, mega shout outs to Inner City Press. You see him here, Matthew Russell Lee, reporting from inside the Southern District of New York. He's got a lot of great reporting. He's got books on Amazon. He's got an awesome X account, and he is there, boots on the ground, reporting so that we all can see what is happening inside. And so make sure you're following him, supporting his work, because we're going to be back for closing arguments, and we're going to to see how the jury rules on this thing. Of course, probably not going to be favorable to Trump. There will be more appeals, and we'll see where it goes. But my friends, we're here. We're covering the Trump saga, all of it. And I would love it if you subscribed wherever it is you're watching it so that we never lose sight of you. You can always come back and join us on the next one. We also have got our website, robertgovea.com, link down in the description below. We have our newsletter there as well. Sign up for that. That way, all of our stories will get delivered right to your inbox and you'll never miss a thing. We'll be looking forward to seeing you back here on the next one.